War Room Pandemic. It is Good Friday, the 10th of April, the year of our Lord 2020. It is a cold and overcast Good Friday here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We're live from Fort Defiance in the old Breitbart Embassy. Episode 112 with over 5.6 million downloads of the podcast. And that's over and above us being ubiquitous on the John Fredericks Radio Network live, on americasvoice.news. Which is now Dish Channel 219, Newsmax TV in 70 million homes, through Chris Ruddy and the team, and also FM 99.1 and 103.9 in Chicago, throughout the world on Nexus IRRS, and also on G News later in the day, subtitled in Mandarin, and really appreciate all the input from the English language crowd, all the way from Latin America to Africa, India, and of course, all of our friends as we push forward Radio Free Asia. We're going to talk later in the show about Voice of America, the debacle over there under Amanda Bennett and the team. So we're going to get to that later in the show. We're going to have Nels Fry from the New York Post is going to join us in the second hour. His amazing analytics piece, basically the useful idiots of corporate America shilling for the Chinese Communist Party. We're all going to get to that. Remember, we've got the pandemic, the economic crisis on top of it, the financial crisis that's triggered, both the solvency and liquidity crisis. All the markets are closed today for Good Friday. Traditionally, they're closed. And Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam in studio today. Jason Miller joining us by phone as he is on duty. He's on assignment for Good Friday with the family. So, Jason, thank you for joining us today.
You got it.
Okay, let's go to. By the way, so the huge controversy of the last couple of days. I want to go to. Can we play the clip of myself yesterday? The clip that we've got. We don't have that.
Not yet. I'm working on
it. What clip do we have ready to go?
We have all the clips from the press briefing yesterday. We have Dr. Fauci also just waiting to pull the clip on us from yesterday. Jason?
Okay, Jason, let's walk through these clips of how we're supposed to do it.
Yeah, so let's, Raheem, if we can go and tee up, let's go into, while we're waiting to get the clip of us from the show yesterday, I'd like to get into Vice President Pence talking about the work being put together, because really the question here is everything is shifting from the closing to now shifting to the reopening, and how that decision is going to be made.
Yeah, and we're still hearing, I think, double talk. I want to make sure that we've got the right clips in order, because it's like we said yesterday. If you look at these models that they're looking at, right? If you look at the models they're looking at, it's talking about an August opening, right? An August opening on the Murray model, and that's where we want to be specific, because I think the president is signaling very strongly it's going to be 1 May. So let's go ahead. Do we have the clips?
Yeah, sure. So we have the vice president talking about this. We have Dr. Birx talking about this. Which one do you guys want to go to?
Let's take them in that order.
Okay.
Of working groups and that are looking at not only how do we reopen the country, but how do we stay open, and I think most of America knows that no one wants to reopen America more than President Donald Trump. But the president's told us we need to do it responsibly, and we're going to follow the data. We're literally following the data on a county-by-county basis.
Okay, so they're back to the county. I understand that this is for a couple of weeks ago. Remember, go back when they were going to open before they expanded to the 30 days. That was going to be a county-by-county analysis, right, which is fine. County-by-county analysis, and talking about doing it in some sort of quadrant, opening up by the quadrant. But it doesn't get to the heart of actually what the model shows. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, and again, this goes to this whole debate that's surrounding the open or not reopen on May 1. isn't, I mean, this is kind of the wrong debate to be having. I mean, we all want to get the economy opened up as soon as possible, but we have to know what the metrics are and what the models are that are going to go and determine that. So what data and modeling are we going to use? What safety metrics will be acceptable? What testing systems will be available? What systems are in place to prevent an immediate explosion in a turnaround here? Now, what we heard from the vice president in that clip right there, this is the first time where we've talked about an internal working group that is actually in charge of this reopening aspect. We've seen President Trump talk about this committee to reopen America, or this potential economic task force is going to come together on some of these things. But this is the first time that we heard that there's an actual internal working group on the reopening. And Raheem, in this next clip with Dr. Birx that I want to get into, she talks about some of the numbers. But again, Steve, to that point, we haven't actually seen what that data or what that modeling is that's going to determine is it safe and ready for us to move forward, if you can play that.
When we've been talking about the asymptomatic group, and that's why I gave you that testing data where 11% of young people under 25 were positive, many of them very low-grade symptoms. What we will be triangulating for you is the testing data with hospital admissions, and then you'll be able to start seeing spectrum of disease. Because what you're not seeing in spectrum of disease is people who never even think that this is something significant, that what they have. We're seeing the significant cases. In testing, you can see that we're getting a lot of people in with symptoms aren't positive. And so really finding out what is the R naught. Is it 6? Is it 5? And the only way to do that at this point right now is to get the antibody tests out there and go into these places that had significant disease. When we talk about attack rates of 7 per 1,000 in New York and 5 per 1,000 in New Jersey, and test the healthcare workers, the first responders, all of the nursing homes for antibodies.
So somebody explain that to me. Jack, what does she say? She was asked a direct question. I just want to know, keep the scarf, hold the spin.
I think
right. I think Dr. Birx, Ambassador Dr. Colonel Birx, right? I'm a fan. Believe me, I'm a fan. But we got to get. I mean, Jason, jump in here. She was asked a question. Did she answer that question?
No, she didn't. And I think this is the big problem that we have.
Okay, Jason, what's your take?
Yeah, no, didn't answer the question. I mean, we did get some insight on some of the different variables that are going into this. So anyone who's been listening to this show, and by the way, I tweeted out some snarky comment last night about, for all the reporter newbies out there, it's a R0 if you're Googling what an R naught is, because you knew no one in that newsroom had any idea what an R naught was. But, folks listening to Pandemic
go back to episode 1. But I love the way she said the R naught. That's total inside baseball nomenclature.
Oh, and you could just see all the reporters. They're just like, they're trying not to show that they're going down and Googling on their phones to be like, what the heck is an R naught? But anyway, here's the thing. So when we talk about this is the whole point of the metrics that will go and lead us to a safe reopening and how we do that as soon as possible. Because an R naught is your transmission rate, which is, you're looking at all these different variables. You're looking at the hospitalizations. You're looking at the fatality rates. You're looking at the our advancements both with vaccines further down the road, if anything, but the therapeutics and the different things that have come about. These are all things that are kind of getting swirled up there, but this is why the actual data and the modeling, and we have to see what the actual White House modeling looks like so we can go and get to this, but in the absence of knowing which data they view as most essential and what internal model they're using, then we're going to have to do this, because, Steve, you hit the nail on the head here. The Democratic governors and mayors are going to attack President Trump and say that you're being reckless and dangerous by opening up too soon. So we have to show here are the benchmarks that we're hitting and meeting so we can go and safely reopen.
Do we have mine and then Sanjay Gupta's from yesterday? Because I think that gets you down to actually where you understand, and you guys, you understand what the downslope of this thing is. Do we have those teed up yet?
We have Sanjay Gupta. We have 2 Sanjay Guptas. If you can give me a more specific.
The Sanjay Gupta where he talks about the 4 August opening.
Yeah, I'm going to grab that right here.
The only way you get to 60,000 is if social distancing, these physical distancing measures stay in place till August 4th, actually. So that's obviously well into the summer, and that's what the models that project 60,000 say that the physical distancing measures have to last until August 4th. So just to keep that in mind.
Okay, we said yesterday that given what they're talking about, the slope of this model from the apex, even with the plateau on the slope of the model, on the Murray, until he updates it this weekend, with continued full mitigation. That means shelter in place. The math, and I just guessed, I said, hey, it's going to be, May, June, July, or not guess, educated to guess, till you get to your 60
deaths a day.
60 deaths a day is basically going to be the end of July, the 1st of August. And Gupta was on right after the press conference, and he saw what they were talking about in the slope, and he says, oh, yeah, okay, I calculate the date's August 4th. So this is what I don't understand, Jason. We're now up there, and we're reinforcing every day until we put forward our own model that we're going off the Murray model and other models like Murray. And it's going to be worth – I mean, we're actually presenting the bid and the ask, right, for the Democratic governors. And if you're going to politicize this for the quote super safety crowd, it's going to be 90 days, still full lock in place, which means you're going to have to bridge that financially, right? You're going to have to also bridge that in the capital markets for the financial crisis on top of the economic crisis to get to August, and then you'll open with testing and all this other stuff versus going in 2 weeks on May 1st. Is that not what's being laid out? But the White House is still – and we're just trying to offer constructive observations, is essentially pushing the 4 August model.
Yes, and we're also, I mean, to your point, Steve, we're negotiating against ourselves, so to speak. And one of the things I want to make sure people don't miss this morning is Dr. Fauci was on CNN. CNN had an exclusive with Dr. Fauci this morning, right at 7 a.m. Well, we'll get to that later in the show when we talk about to do interviews with CNN or not to do interviews. But the buried lead in that, he also talked about this working group, and he's also very careful to distance himself from the testing aspect. He removes himself from the equation but says, hey, I'm on the task force, but I'm not the testing guy. So he kind of sidesteps that. But he ended it by saying that ultimately this is going to be put in front of the president and the vice president. So now Dr. Fauci has moved the goalpost. It's not up to him. It's not up to Dr. Birx. This is up to ultimately the president. So there's been kind of this, I've called him Neo from the Matrix before, but he's now putting this back on the president, and this is the president's own team. I mean, look, if you're President Trump, you want your scientific experts, your health community experts to put together the data and the modeling so you can make the smartest and safest decisions. That's both on when he took the important early action to shut off travel with China, which we know there are a lot of other internal people like Peter Navarro that were pushing that cause, to cut off travel from Europe, which the New York Times would like to say is the only way that this virus even came to the country. But then as far as the opening back up, the ramp up also needs to be metric driven from data and modeling, but that information has to be presented to the president and the vice president so they can make the best decisions. This isn't some kind of hot potato handoff. But it's also got to be, and we're going to get to this in the next segment, it also has to be socialized with the American people. You just can't come out and drop a bomb on them that, hey, here's how we're going to do it. And my point is, day after day after day after day, we reinforce the Murray model as the absolute template that we're using without any changes to any what the assumptions are of what the social distancing or what the stay in place is going to be or all these kind of other actions, right? And so now if you buy the Murray model, and he's going to update it over the weekend, we know, and come out next week, this model, the biggest assumption, there's full mitigation to get you to August 4th. The unlocking is August 4th. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break here. John Fredericks Radio Network, America's Voice, Dish 219, all of our other sites. Got the War Room team. We're going to come back on Good Friday in just a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. It is Good Friday. You're in the I guess the most serious and solemn part of the Christian calendar. Last night was Holy Thursday. Passover started on Wednesday. I think we're on the second or third day of Passover. Holy Saturday is tomorrow. In fact, as a broadcasting note for everybody, we're going to be doing a 2-hour special tomorrow. It's going to be Descent into Hell, Life of the Chinese under the Chinese Communist Party. We're going to have experts from all over to talk about the daily grind of what the Chinese people have to go through in this dictatorship and what that means for us going forward. They're clearly in a full-scale information and economic war against the United States of America. As a breaking news, the Chinese Communist Party has announced that they're sending certain medical equipment or humanitarian equipment to the Vatican. It shows you the callous nature of this is a organization, the CCP, totally atheistic, that is dedicated to destroy Cardinal Zen in the Catholic Church in China, just like they're trying to destroy the Christian church. Remember, there's approximately 100 million underground house Christians in China that are every day hunted and persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party, like they persecute the Falun Gong, like they persecute the Tibetan Buddhists, like they persecute the Uyghurs out in East Turkestan. Any religious practice whatsoever is absolutely antithetical to the worship of the Chinese Communist Party. Remember, there's only 90 million Chinese members of the Chinese Communist Party in a nation that's got between 1.4 and 1.5 billion people. So it's a very small group that actually controls the country. And of that, the people that really run it are in the thousands. And it's essentially 10 or 12 families since the revolution that continue to control the Communist Party today in a dictatorship. It's nothing more than the Qing dynasty brought large. That's what this film I'm working on that hopefully will have out sometime in the fall of this year, The Last Emperor, the rise and now the fall of Emperor Xi is and they're absolutely outrageous. They will stop at nothing. We're getting later in the show talk about Voice of America, big controversy about the Chinese Communist Party and influence in the Voice of America. Also, like I said, we have Nels Fry on at the top of the hour from the New York Post, his great analytical piece talking about the corporate America as useful idiots to the Chinese Communist Party. So we'll get into all that. But I want to go back to unlocking the country. This is now the 30 days to save America. We had a much harsher regime. If you're going to shut down for 30 days, go about and do it. Stop the flights. Don't let international flights come to JFK. Don't let the domestic flights leave New York City and go to Puerto Rico. The governor of Puerto Rico, again, Jack, I think yesterday, another plea for help. She put out a tweet with attached to basically something she sent the FAA, said, please stop the flights from JFK into Puerto Rico. We'd also stop vehicular traffic interstate to shut this thing down. The White House is going in a different direction. All right, it's still 90% of the country is some sort of shelter in place, but the key thing is unlocking this in May. So, Jason, before we get to the rest of the clips, where do you actually think we stand? Because every day you think we would have more clarity, and you can tell from the media this morning, Mika and the Morning Joe crowd and all that, they're going to make this a huge deal that we can't open. You can't open until there's mass testing all over the country. Everybody's been tested. You're going to have to stay locked down. And, I mean, they look comfortable being locked down far later than August, right? They're talking about a year to 18 months. I mean, some of these numbers are pretty they're horrific if you think what's going to happen to the economy and to the financial markets.
Well, absolutely, and that's the thing to keep in mind here is that Joe and Mika can go, well, first of all, they're not going to miss any paychecks. They're still going to get their checks from MSNBC. Most of the decision makers in this process are going to be fine with their paychecks. I mean, that's just a reality of this. Look, we're either going to be reactive to what the media and the National Democrats are telling us, or we're going to be proactive and put forth a game plan and the data and the metrics for how we go and reopen this. And this is one of the clips. I know, Steve, you wanted to finish up the analysis, but Raheem, when you're ready, I do want to play this clip of Sanjay Gupta coming on this morning right after Dr. Fauci on CNN, talking with Allison Camerata and talking about how he felt Dr. Fauci was slow rolling it. Do you have that by chance?
We do have it, but should we? I want to play the Dr. Fauci. Don't we have Fauci's clip first on CNN? Let's play Fauci.
Yeah, Fauci this morning,
and then Gupta.
I want to talk about something else that we understand is being discussed among the task force and in the White House, and that is when to reopen the country. The president is eager to do so, as he has said. He's even eyeing the date of May 1st. Who is going to oversee that? Is there someone who is coordinating the plan for reopening the country?
Yes, that's a very good question. It isn't a single person. As you know, the task force meets every single day, studies all the data that come in. There's also a group that's looking at what the best approach would be from the standpoint of the kinds of people that you'd want to get out there first, the people who are very necessary to the functioning of society. At the end of the day, we have FEMA involved. We have Dr. Debbie Birx, who is the coordinator within the task force, and we go over the data on a day-by-day basis, and we report it to the president and the vice president. That decision will be made at that level.
Okay, let's go right to Sanjay Gupta's analysis of that.
At the end of this month, the end of April, he's sort of saying the same thing. I think he's, purposely a little bit and understandably sort of slow rolling the idea that this is going to take longer still. The models that he's talking about, where they quote the tragic number of 60,000 people dying, still a lot lower than the original models. They're predicated on stay-at-home orders until the first week of June, and really now going into August in some of these models.
Okay, so Jason, what is Fauci telling us, and how's Gupta framing it?
So what Fauci's doing is Fauci's playing hot potato. He doesn't want to take the responsibility here. I mean, this is, Steve, what gets me so upset is that President Trump and Vice President Pence deserve to have the data and the modeling and the game plan as far as from the scientific and healthcare community aspect of what we have to do to stop the spread, how to treat people, and then how to go and open this back up. And he's not getting that. What he's getting is a bunch of, the data is real, the modeling is fake, or we don't really know, and I don't need Dr. Fauci to get up there and slow roll things. I mean, we're talking about government. Government can slow roll things all that they want. What we need is Dr. Fauci to step up and lead here and say, we know that we need to open the economy as soon as possible because people are hurting and people are suffering. But to keep us safe, we have to follow these guidelines, and when we get to these metrics, then we believe it will be safe enough to open, whether we go by states, quadrants, counties, however you want to define it. If we're going part of the population in different areas, we're going certain age groups. There are a whole host of variables that you look at to safely reopen. But we have to know the data and the modeling and the game plan to be able to do it, because I want to make something real clear to people. You can see right now that President Trump is being attacked by the media for saying that he initiated these things too late. Even though he shut down travel with China, did a lot of things early, they're saying he waited way too long to do it. Now they're going to start attacking him, saying that he's opening up too early. It's heads he loses, tails he loses when it comes to the media and the National Democrats in a re-election year. So we have to be the ones who are systematically laying out, here's the game plan and the math and the numbers behind it.
Well, listen, I think one of the things, Jason, this is Jack, that nobody has answered. At what time are we going to have the herd immunity that will allow us to open? I mean, this is the reality. We're going to get herd immunity at some point, and that's what happens with every single virus that has ever come across the human species, okay? Especially an influenza-type virus, a respiratory virus. Now, if we're going to do this and we're going to wait and see what's going to happen and we're going to test and maybe August, nobody has defined for me when we hit that moment where the risk is less than the reward for opening up. At some point, we have to define an acceptable number of deaths. And when they say 60 a day, I have a problem with that because we're losing 160 people a day to opiates last year.
I want to go to this. This goes back to Fauci and to Birx. Fauci said, yes, well, there's models, but it's updated with data. We understand that. I mean, sometimes he patronizes people, but he won't get to the heart of it. We got to see the model, the assumptions that went into it. The data is just the daily updates for the information that comes in. But we need to see the architecture of how they think about this, because if the architecture is the University of Washington model, it's to Jack's point. They every day talk about this assumption. The University of Washington model lays out that you're essentially going to go to at least August, right, until you get an acceptable level, at least everything they've implied. And that is under a mitigation that is some sort of shelter in place for May, June, and July. Now, I would respectfully submit you don't need to do that if you've got a plan that approaches this in some sort of highly controlled opening that is a close run thing in management. But you're also correct, is that when is the herd immunity come? Because that means essentially when you feel you can take off start to ease off all of the restrictions, not just the shelter in place, but all the restrictions. That is what in the White House press corps, as I think Brett Hume says, the C team that's in there, or somebody said the C team that's in there, they are at least asking when the president leaves. Yesterday's questions were much better than they've done, but it's still not good enough. And I think it's incumbent upon Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci to have a pen and pad and do it on national TV so people can look in, and let's go through the model. And let's particularly go through it now that obviously there's a working group, this economic task force, the opening task force, that is moving towards at least something happening on May 1st. This is, unless you want to have a massive political battle, which I don't think is in the best interest of the country, to get total buy-in on this, you have to start socializing this. You have to start socializing this now. Okay, we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to get back into this much more detail because this is the heart of it. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. We want to hear all your thoughts, your observations. Understand it's Good Friday. We'll be up on the podcast later. The holiest day, or the most solemn day in the Christian tradition, Good Friday, 10 April, the year of our Lord 2020. Raheem Kassam, Jack Maxey, Jason Miller. We're going to return in the War Room after a short commercial break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. Okay, before we get back into this fight about the bid and the ask, is it going to be 1 May? Is it going to be 4 August? And if it's going to be 1 May, how exactly are we going to do it? And how is the President of the United States going to convince not just the country that's the right thing to do? He's kind of devolved this power back to these governors. How he's going to get these governors on board to actually do this. We're going to get to that in a moment, but I want to go over the updates about the nation and the world.
So I want to start in Italy, where we've heard a lot about the trajectory. You know, you're at the apex, you're heading on the downward trend. We're seeing a decline in the death rate. We're seeing a decline in the number of hospitalizations.
Well, Birx keeps pointing to Spain and Italy as America's. We're just like it. We're 2 weeks behind Italy.
So then let me tell you where Italy really is right now, and it plays into what we've covered in the first two segments of the show, which is the tail looks very long. The number of daily deaths are still in the 600s. This was not a tail off from the 900 peak, then it didn't fall to 400 and 100. This is now very slow. It's hovered in the 600s for all of the last week. It's going to stay there, they reckon. To see a really, really slow downturn because, of course, as you know, there is a lag to all of this stuff. The people who are hospitalized last month are the ones dying today.
Is this the plateauing that they were talking? Is this what Cuomo's implying when he talks about the plateauing, not the straight up and straight down? But is this the plateauing he's talking about?
I think it is. I mean, you have to remember it's a parabolic curve, so it's equal on both sides in an ideal sense. So
No. It's a parabolic curve if done the right way. This is the point. It's not a parabolic curve.
I said theoretically,
right,
it's
okay,
a parabolic curve,
fine.
right? So
you agree Italy right now is not parabolic?
No, I agree that Italy's in a bad way. I mean, there's no question. And I think we're going to find out some of the things with Italy have to do with the structure of their healthcare system. I think it's going to have to do with the demographics, some of the housing that they engage in, multi-generational housing. You see the complete difference with Germany. Over 30% of the elderly in Italy live with little children in their house. In Germany, it's less than 6%. So you're going to see it impact people differently in different areas of the world. We've said this all along. Just like you're going to see urban areas in America have a tougher time than probably some smaller states.
Why does she continue to say, why does Dr. Birx continue to point out, and am I wrong here, point out Italy and Spain as the two examples that we're looking at? She says the United States are going to track down the path.
I think there's a clear answer for that. They've shut down the entire country, and they've got to maintain a level of fear to justify what they've done, in my opinion.
You don't think the math? You think it's fear and it's not the set of math?
Well, I think if we look back on prior pandemics as defined by the CDC, the Hong Kong flu of 1968 killed 110,000 Americans. The Shanghai flu that came out 57, 58 killed over 100,000 Americans. I don't remember at any time during those periods of time a discussion about shutting down the United States of America. And these two pandemics killed more Americans, according to the CDC, than their estimates of what this one will do.
But but back to these numbers though. Why does she continue to compare? Excuse me. Why does she continue to compare the United States to Italy?
Like I said, I think that this makes it look like those guys are heroes because we're not Italy, and under any circumstances, I don't think we were going to be Italy. So I think that by using the constantly framing this in the worst possible case scenario, like we could be Italy or Madrid, they are sort of, I think, providing a little reassurance for the level of shutdown that they've gone to.
Look, if you take even if the curve does appear to be parabolic, Italy's curve would still then remember we had the first death in mid-February, so that would take us to the end of May anyway, which is I think what Ambassador Birx is getting at. Which, when she says this, it's
what Mike Pence said to CNN when he was at the Amazon distribution center. He said it'd be around Memorial Day of the 1st of June. Remember, he gave that answer. Already, that's what we said at the time. Hey, internally, they're already looking at May as a shelter-in-place month implicit in the modeling of what they're looking at.
Right. And again, the United States isn't Italy, especially in the geographical sense. And so there will be plenty of other variable factors involved with this that involve people leaving one hotspot and perhaps seeding another hotspot elsewhere. And the contain and control of that will lead to how long the tail is in the United States of America. The thing that a lot of people don't understand with this, when they talk about, the models were wrong, but you have to understand, the models can only deal with what you put in. And the information that was put in was new, was half baked Chinese from the Italians, from all of this stuff. So you can only get out as good as you put in. So the reason the models keep shifting and keep changing, and I think, Steve, one of your questions is always, hey, where's the government model? Where's the government model? I don't know that there is a proper government model on this. I believe there is somebody who goes in there every day with a pen.
Can I jump in here real quick on this one? I want to jump in. So to this point, the IHME, this Institute for Health and Metrics at University of Washington, the Dr. Murray model that we keep talking to, and again, I think we've been very responsible on the show to always say this is one of the models, this is one of the approaches, and why it is so critical that the government and the White House, and again, whether that's technically a CDC or that's technically a Dr. Birx, but there has to be something that is their models. It's like when you talk about in political campaigns, you can't just say, I saw Rasmussen or I saw Fox News or I saw Emerson polling. I want to have my own polling that I commission. The IHME tweeted out last night, we strongly agree that decision makers should draw on a diversity of COVID-19 models. We're committed to scientific debate and constant improvement on our predictions. Hold on. It gets even better. The next tweet, 7 hours later, so this at this point is like midnight Seattle time, right? Our estimates change regularly. Why? New data, improved methods. Hold on, they're still tweeting. So 5 hours ago, so then this would have been at 2 in the morning, University of Washington time. Download the daily state-by-state projections of hospital resource use, daily deaths, and total deaths used in our COVID-19 data visualization. And then they continue to say our projections for the U.S. and Europe estimate peak demand for hospital services. But here's my whole point. Like, these guys are looking and say, wait a minute, we don't want the entire country to say that it's on us. I don't think Dr. Murray ever woke up and said, the White House is going to treat us like we're the gospel. This is why the White House has to have their own.
I tell you who called Dr. Murray and said, hey, we need to start tweeting, is the Chancellor and the Board of Visitors, and particularly the lawyers for the Chancellor and the Board of Visitors. Said, we want to make it very clear. You're just another schmendrick, right?
Right.
You're a great guy, and but you never got deputized, and we want to make sure the nation is not. This is what we've been saying. Those tweets right there shows you that the Chancellor, the Board of Visitors, And the lawyers said, make sure you get out in front of this, that, hey, you're just another guy. You're doing a swell job. We love you. You're fantastic, but you're just another guy. It's
just a researcher, not a policy guy.
Exactly. I'm just a researcher. I'm just putting it up.
But isn't that the point as well? Is that why has anybody been looking at one particular model as a means by which to either form or inform policy?
They do say they're looking at a raft of them. That's why I keep going back. It's the real clear politics poll of polls, where you just in the average of them, you have directionally what's going on, but you don't have company.
But Jason,
on Wall Street, you don't have company guidance.
The most important thing here, though, is not the data, because everybody sees the same data: number of new infections, number of dead, number of ICUs, number of ventilators. What we still do not understand are the assumptions that the government is using to manipulate the data.
Exactly.
Right. But here's the thing, right, Jason? You just said, you're running a political campaign. You don't want to just go by what Harris polling is telling you or what Pew Research is telling you. But then, Steve, you just said, the poll of polls. You also don't just rely on the poll of polls. You also try and get your own inside information.
By the way, the poll of polls is just a checking.
Right.
Remember, the poll of polls was wrong in 2016 about Donald J. Trump. The poll of polls was wrong, but it's directionally by it takes out the variability of what's a good poll and what's a bad poll, subject to what they include in there, right? So it just gives you directionally a trend, and that's fine. And we've said they should do the checkings against all these other outside things. And here's the other thing. It's what's so obvious in the critical path going down here. You're not going to be able to have this massive, what you're going to have discussion with the nation about the unlocking of this, and you forward your case, your theory of the case of what this is, based on what you see, what your policies have done to lessen this, and particularly going forward. We're going to get to those probably in the next segment. I want to get to Pence's thing right now about the testing. Jason, do you have another clip to play if we go right to the Pence, because this talks about the other aspect of it, which is the managed open. Understanding we don't have herd immunity, and we're not going to stay locked in place until August. You're going to have a managed open, correct? And it's what aspects of that managed open that you need to have.
Well, I mean, there are some people now arguing that some of the measures that we took, particularly shutting down the schools, will make this much longer and much harder for us to get through, because what we know is that the children, for the most part, are unaffected by this. I mean, we've had one fatality in the state of New York of somebody under the age of 19. I'm not sure of the circumstances. I think there's some debate about it. But if you were to allow the children to go to school, which they are doing in Sweden and some of these Nordic countries, guess what? You would increase the likelihood of herd immunity in the greater population by making herd immunity in the younger population who are likely not to get sick. And as I have said from day one, the responsibility should have been to isolate the elderly or the people who have these comorbidities. Because all we're doing with this, it seems to me, as I observe, because they say it's going to come back in the fall and it's going to come back in the spring, the longer it takes to get to herd immunity, the longer it takes for us to get out of this crisis.
But I don't even understand why we're talking about herd immunity. We don't have any data on immunity. We don't, and especially when this whole thing kicked off, we don't know how long immunity lasts for. You're seeing the studies being done now of people saying, well, actually, you may only have, the Germans are saying now, you may only have 18 months of immunity against this thing.
But that's generally true for all respiratory. We don't have a vaccine for the common cold, right? So
you don't have a vaccine for SARS.
What happens is the virus itself will mutate over time.
Let's play Pence's thing so we tee up for the next segment.
Let's be clear. Reopening the country, as the president is very anxious to do at the earliest responsible moment, will be through a combination of facts. First would be that we are at the end of the coronavirus for most major communities. Another piece of that is that we have therapeutics for Americans to take medicines if they contract the disease. Another piece of that is guidance from the CDC to public institutions, to businesses large and small, about how to conduct themselves in a safe and a responsible way. And testing is also a piece of that. And as Admiral Joie has reflected, we are spending a great deal of time expanding testing today. Every single day, there's more and more tests across the country But we're also working to scale testing that as we move into this summer and move into the fall, we'll have the testing we need to do what these doctors call not diagnostic testing, which is to take a test of a person that has symptoms, but surveillance testing so we can identify people that may have had it and may be immune.
Okay, so let's go. We're going to take a break. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. We want your voice in this show. And trust me, we go through these and we try to answer them. We try to deal with those. Also, at War Room Pandemic, at War Room 2020, 30daystossaveamerica.com. This is War Room Pandemic. Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon. We're going to return on Good Friday to continue this debate, this set of analytics of Nels from the top of the hour. We'll be back in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. I know everybody loves hearing the voice of Mika. Let's go to Mika on Morning Joe today. She was doing Good Friday duty. I don't think Joe was around.
One thing he often talks about is opening up the country. There's this May 1st date being tossed around. I'll say it so you don't have to. Not possible. Not scientifically possible. There will be a resurgence. There's not testing available widespread enough to contain this. And most scientists will say that we're looking down the barrel of 18 months. I ask you, how, with what Americans are being asked to do, with what New Yorkers are being asked to do, how can this country sustain this economically and emotionally?
Okay, we don't need to hear Cuomo. Cuomo gave the response, but it was he agreed with. So, Jason, you see how it's getting teed up right now. And it's going to obviously, I think, unfortunately, get highly sized and not really deal with looking at all the facts and weighing and measuring, a cost-benefit analysis. So walk me through the Mika position, because she takes even the more radical. She takes the 18 months, not even the additional 90 days to August.
Right, and just so you know, Steve, Joe was on the broadcast this morning. I lasted about 2 minutes from like 6 a.m. to 6:02, and then Joe's just such brain damage I had to go and flip over to CNN so I could take my pain that way this morning. But look, here is the dynamic that's being set up for President Trump, is especially when these Dr. Murray revised numbers come out showing of what the overall model would look like if the social mitigation, social distancing efforts are lifted, quote unquote, too soon, as he said on Anderson Cooper, along with Sanjay Gupta the other night. And so they're going to set it up so then every death after this date, or every death, or every malady, that happens to citizens of the United States will be President Trump's fault. That's what they're trying to set this up. Again, it's terrible. I think, look, the dramatic action that President Trump has taken so far has saved lives. And the fact that we have an article in the New York Post today saying that the USNS Comfort and the Javits Center are largely empty, I mean, that's a good thing. That means that we're saving some lives. That means that we've done things in the right direction to help, and I'll defend President Trump all day long on that. But now we're getting to the point where the Democrats literally just want to set it up so heads he loses, tails he loses.
By the way, you're seeing in the New York, because of the Javits and the USNS, it's the hydroxy. That's what's going to come out. The hydroxy has been used, as Dr. Bill Grace told us, at a unnamed hospital on the Upper East Side, right, about how effective that was. I want to go to, but where Mika's laying it out, don't you think there's got to be a counter narrative today? And jump in here, guys, to walk through. You see what they've laid out. It's 18 months, and it's irresponsible if you open up before 18 months, and then they're going to take that's the out. They're going to at least want until August or into the fall. How does the president and the White House start to counter that? Because in Vice President Pence's first comments, he said it's got to be the end, Jack, of coronavirus is the first thing about opening up, the end of coronavirus. But the coronavirus is not going to end on 1 May. We're not even close to it, right? So you can't – that's my point. The imprecision here, not tied to a set of math, is I think only getting us in deeper.
And let's go back to what the real purpose of this flattening of the curve and the social separation, I mean, I think we've lost sight of it. It was not to make sure that no American died. It was to make sure that our healthcare system was not overwhelmed. And what we're seeing inside New York City is that their healthcare system is not entirely overwhelmed, and they are the worst case scenario. So I think we have to start looking at the risk reward of reopening this country. I don't think that we can sit on our hands for 18 months and pretend that we will have a country anymore.
Impossible. But you can't. But so how do you do it? Let's go to, they're talking about the testing and surveillance testing, all those aspects. What needs to be in place on 1 May? If they said by county, by quadrant, what elements have to be in place for them to start to tell the American people, here's the way we're going to do it, and here's what's going to be in place to manage it?
I'm loath to find myself agreeing with ex-President Obama, but he did come out yesterday with some very good advice. Tell the American people the absolute truth. Tell them who's at risk. Tell them what the likely mortality rates are, because that's what people need to know. And I think in general, you'll get a consensus from the American people when they decide.
I don't think that was his version of the truth, though. I think he looks at it very differently. He's an 18-month guy.
Well, no, he's saying the biggest mistake any of us can make in a situation like this is to misinform the public. You have to tell them all the truth as you know it, day by day, right? It's a moving situation, and I think that's one of the things that we've done very poorly in this country and probably globally in the West. We've been asked as citizens to accept this shutdown. We have been, I think, in every country doing as best we can as individual citizens. There's certainly areas of even New York State where they don't have a case in some counties. So everybody is participating, but I think at some point you have to ask the simple question, can we survive? Can we handle the casualties?
So,
and
Jason,
I think we can.
Jason, what do you think has to be in place? We've got about a minute here before we go to the top of the hour. What do you think's got to be in place when they start making the case for May 1?
We have to start laying out the formula of here is what acceptable, the acceptable numbers or the acceptable strain or the loss of life of what that will look like, and start putting that into context, into overall other things that people die from. But we also have to make clear that the right measures are going to be in place so then it doesn't explode and we have a huge second wave that goes and rips through. Because if we lift everything and say, hey, May 1, we're all back to business, and all of a sudden the places that didn't get bushwhacked before, your Nebraskas, your even states like Arizona that didn't get it as bad, certain parts of Texas, if they all of a sudden then have massive hotspots because everyone's going about business like it was before coronavirus, then everyone's going to get overwhelmed. I want to just push back on one point a moment ago. Yes, there was the aspect of flattening the curve because we had the demand on the healthcare system, but this has always also been about saving lives. And what can we do to smash that curve? Even though we use the tougher language like smashing the curve and the tougher actions, the 30 days to save America, we wanted to follow more of the model of what China did with locking things down, so we saved lives, not just stretched out the pain.
Yeah, if you're going to take the 30 days, let's do it. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We return. We got Nels Fry from the New York Post to talk about the Chinese Communist Party in the globalist corporate world. Please, we want all your comments. You're blowing up on hashtag War Room Pandemic. We want to hear more. Also, anything you think we're missing. We want news clips. Some of the stuff you sent is absolutely fantastic. Great community. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. This is War Room Pandemic live from Capitol Hill. We're going to return for the second hour in just a moment.